Hey, it's Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about ACT reading. And remember what we talked about and how important it is, of course, that you get the very best score that you can get when it comes to ACT. It determines how much scholarship money you get. It determines what kind of school you can get into. So hopefully if you pay attention to these things on ACT reading, this is one of those areas where you can make up some real ground when it comes to that composite score. But what you have to do is to create a game plan. And that's what we've been talking about, is creating a game plan, giving you some strategies that you can use, of course, to conquer ACT reading. We've already looked at the prose passages and how you would, of course, approach the prose passage. In lesson number 7, what we're going to do today is look at the social science passages, give you a description of them, tell you some of the things that are questions that you need to be trying to ask yourself as you go through and annotate. And today what we're going to do, of course, is look at how to approach the social science passages on ACT reading. Well, let's talk a little bit briefly about the passage 2, the social science. The description is these passages are usually on psychology, sociology, anthropology, or any other human behavior topics. Common themes include passages which generally focus on arguments, evidence, and theories. Today, what we're going to do, of course, is give you a sample social science passage. And what we want you to do, of course, is to go through and read it, go through and read the passage, and then be prepared, of course, when we come back on the other side, to think about some of the strategies that we're going to introduce to you, and think about what you've read and see if we can attempt to answer the 5 basic types of questions that will be asked on ACT reading. So with that, what we're going to do is cut away for a few minutes and give you an opportunity, of course, to read this particular passage. And the passage is the influence of music on social movements. Okay, you should have had enough time that you were able to go through, of course, and read the passage. Now that we've familiarized ourselves with the passage by going through and reading it, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how we approach the social science passages. Well, there are 3 basic things that we want to look at. Number 1, social science passages require a different annotation approach than the prose passages. The prose passages, in my mind, are a little bit simpler for me to do because I'm just kind of into that kind of thing. The second easiest passage for me, though, would be the social science one. It's this passage where the social sciences passages where the social sciences tend to be structured in a traditional thesis-driven essay format, with a clear thesis at the end of the introduction and a topic sentence that begin each body paragraph by reviewing the content of those paragraphs and how the content supports the thesis. They typically have a concluding statement to drive home their argument. Start by underlining or highlighting the thesis in the topic sentence. So what we're going to do, of course, is talk a little bit about the different questions that should be answered or asked and answered. But before when we do that, though, it's important for us to understand that the strategies that we create, which may be like the strategies I'm giving you or strategies you create yourself, we just need to be consistent with whatever strategy that we choose. Remember, there's more than one way, of course, to skin a cat. So the questions that might need to be answered would be things like, what is our thesis? What are the supporting details? What inferences, if any, are made? What conclusion was drawn? So when we're looking at answering these questions, now you see how I chose, of course, to kind of annotate it. And one of the first things that I did is I always look at the first sentence of the paragraph when it comes to social science. It's kind of a setup. It's the setup question, or statement. What it basically does is it gets me prepared to kind of wrap my mind around what it is exactly that they're going to be asking of me in this particular passage. And you notice I highlighted that, of course, in purple here. If you're on the written test, you might need to underline it. And then what I did, of course, in blue here is I went through and found what my thesis was. And it says, from the civil rights movement in the United States to anti-apartheid protests in South Africa, music has played a vital role in mobilizing communities and spreading the message of resistance. I identified that, of course, as being my thesis. And then for each paragraph in the body of the passage, I underlined the first statement in each one of them, because those are what the supporting arguments would. And the rest of those particular paragraphs or sentences in that paragraph should support whatever that topic sentence, of course, gives you. And then the last thing that I did is I went to look at the concluding statement. As music continues to evolve, its role in social movements remains vital, reminding us of the power of collective expression in the pursuit of change. And that would be my concluding statement. And if you notice here, It's a very simple idea here. Had a sit-up statement, I had some supporting arguments, and then a concluding statement that I made when it came to social sciences. And once again, that's what, for me, makes this a pretty simple, simple passage to understand. Well, we're going to look at the 5 different types of questions that might be asked, of course, when it comes to the social science test on ACT reading. What is the primary focus of the passage? The history of popular music genres, the role of music in social movements, B, C, the evolution of music in the digital age, or D, the influence of artists on cultural trends. Well, the best answer is B, the role of music in social movements, and the rationale was the passage focuses on how music has influenced and supported social movements throughout history, from the civil rights movement in the United States to modern activism. It discusses how music serves as a rallying cry, a means of expression, and tool for mobilizing communities and spreading messages of resistance. The primary emphasis is on the role of music in promoting social change. Hence, B is the best answer. The second type of question that may be asked when it comes to ACT reading is supporting details here. Which example from the paragraph illustrates how music has been used in social movements? A, the creation of new music genres. B, songs like Times They Are Changing that address social issues. The rise of digital music platforms, the popularity of music festivals. Well, I do, just based on my reading, I remember they mentioned the times they are changing, and that kind of sent my antenna up a little bit when I saw that, of course, in the answer choice. And for me, the best answer would have been songs like The Times Are Changing that address social issues. And it said an example, so they gave an example, and The Times They Are Changing is my example here. The rationale, the passage specifically mentions songs such as The Times They Are Changing and Strange Fruit, which were used during the civil rights movement to highlight social issues and inspire action. These songs became anthems for activists and embodied the emotional landscape of the movement, directly illustrating how music has been used in the social movement. So it's a pretty straightforward answer here, pretty straightforward question and straightforward answer. Question 3, inference. Remember we said what an inference is. An inference is a conclusion that we draw based on what we believe the author is trying to convey to us. This is what can be inferred about the relationship between music and activism in the past. A, music is often irrelevant to social issues. B, music can enhance the effectiveness of social movement. C, activists prefer spoken word over music. D, music distracts from the seriousness of the social issues. Well, the best answer once again is B, music can enhance the effectiveness of social movements. And the rationale is that the passage suggests that music plays a crucial role in mobilizing communities, fostering unity, and inspiring action in social movements. By providing a shared cultural identity and emotional connection to the cause, music strengthens the effectiveness of social movements, making complex issues more relatable and encouraging participation. If you think about it, during the civil rights movement, of course, there were anthems, there were songs like We Shall Overcome that accompanied those particular movements or those particular protests. Question 4 is vocabulary context. Remember, we said that sometimes contextual understanding is what we look at in prose, and in social sciences, vocabulary context may be something that we are asked about. In this particular question, in the passage, what does marginalized voices refer to? Well, I look at that once again. I don't have to necessarily read the paragraph to answer this question if I have a clue about what marginalized voices mean. And my statement to you would be, if you have a great vocabulary, if you read, if you are a reader, in some cases you can ask a question like this without having to read the passage. A, popular opinions that dominate discussion, is that a marginalized voice? Popular, marginalized, that doesn't sound like it goes to me. Perspective of individuals who are often overlooked or oppressed, views that are easily ignored in society. D, opinions of artists that gain widespread recognition. Well, the best answer is B, perspectives of individuals often overlooked or oppressed. And the rationale, the term marginalized voices in the passage refers to perspectives of individuals or groups who are often oppressed or excluded from the mainstream society. Music in this context gives a platform for those voices. The last question of the types of questions that are asked by ACT reading, in this particular case in social science, is the author's purpose. Once again, it's identical to the question type that you would see, of course, when you were identifying, questions, of course, for prose. What is the author's primary purpose in the passage? Well, as we read that, we formulate what our opinion about that is, of course, as we go. to discuss the evolution of music genres over time, to highlight the significance of music in supporting and shaping social movements. C, to analyze the historical context of various social movements. D, to promote specific artists and their contributions to music. Well, he didn't talk specifically about any artists. He did talk specifically about some different, music examples. The best answer, B, to highlight the significance of music in supporting and shaping social movements. The author's primary purpose is to emphasize how music has played an integral role in social movements, from the past civil rights and the anti-apartheid movements to the present modern movements like Me Too and the climate change activist movement. What we have attempted to do, of course, is go through and look at the social science type questions, of course, or social science passages, of course, on ACT reading. And we hope we've been able to give you some insights about how it is, of course, that you can kind of attack these passages. The next time that we see each other, we'll be talking about humanities. And a lot of the things that we talked about of how we approach social science questions will be the same way that we will approach humanities questions. This is Coach Ans from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online. Do your part. Go through, take the tips that we've given, go and find as much as you can possibly find, of course, to help you do well on ACT so that your mom and dad won't have so much pressure on them, of course, to pay for your school. So remember, scholarship money's out there. All you have to do is go get it. And the best way to go get it is get a great score when it comes to ACT.